Good evening. I want to welcome everyone to this year's first installment of our District Advisory Committee. Before we do welcomes and introductions, we would like to say that today's successful spelling bee has sent 8 wonderful scholars from our school district to the county competition, and we want to thank some of the folks here in the room for providing leadership to that. So with no further ado, tonight's agenda is a singular topic. We're going to be working on our education specifications with the help of cooperative strategies and Mr. David Sturtz, who will introduce himself in a few minutes. And in an effort to take our forward-thinking, progressive 21st century education model and tie it to our needs for excellent school facilities and the things we want to put in it. So with that said, we'd like to start with Ms. Tingle there, who will introduce herself and pass the microphone around.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bernice Tingle, and I'm I'm part of the Mountain House Community Service District. I almost said Lambertville Unified School District.
My name is Alvina Kaiser, and I'm the Chief Business Official for the School District.
My name is Jennifer Duran, and I'm the Vice Principal at Cuesta.
Irene Buzatil, the Principal at Lambertville Elementary School.
Lisa Scafidi,
Second grade teacher at Lambertville.
Colin Clements, LUSD Trustee.
Thor Harrison, Associate Superintendent.
Heather Sharp, Principal Cuesta.
Matt Balzerini, School Board Trustee.
And my name is David Sturtz. I'm with Cooperative Strategies.
And back here to my left is
Jen Lanza, Administrative Assistant to Thor Harrison.
And Noelle Balzerini, Executive Assistant, Superintendent's Office.
And with those introductions, I'll turn it over to Mr. Sturtz.
Well, good evening. Thanks for having me. Feel a little bit strange standing in front of a podium and for a few folks. So if it's all right if I sit down at some point? Absolutely. It's okay. I don't know if we are recording, so we need to do this, or? Well,
either if you're presenting, you can either use that one or use that one.
Roger. I think if it's all right with y'all, I'm going to sit down. It feels like that. I have this rule. It's less than 12 people, I sit. Okay, so a little bit of background on what we're doing tonight. In personal introduction, I'll be brief. Cooperative Strategies, we're an educational consulting firm, work with districts around the country. My work is doing facilities master planning, education specifications with the firm. What we're going to start with tonight is just looking at your LCAP summary. And we're going to do 2 things, very cut and dry tonight. We're going to look at the 1-page summary that you all made of your 115-page plus report. That was condensed down to a nice 1-page summary of what you're doing. And our task is to do 2 things with it tonight. One is to boil it down into its essence of what are the themes that are emerged from our LCAP activities here, and how to communicate that to the public, what you're doing, because it's impossible to communicate 115 pages. It's equally boring to communicate a spreadsheet. And so what's the meat and potatoes of what is going on here? And so for you to communicate to the public what you're doing, what the priorities are. That's the first. The second task is to then say, based upon those, what are the facility implications for your education specifications? When I say an education specification, in brief, with my lingo, it's a written document to design professionals about the educational purpose and programs that should be accounted for in the design. So it's an education first, get the horse before the cart, programs before design. And so what we're going to look at is 3 different categories of implications of your LCAP activities. One is what are the implications for space types, the kinds of spaces that you need, and the sizes of those spaces to accommodate the activities, purpose users activities. Then what are the adjacencies? In other words, how should these spaces relate to each other? Because in any good design, in any good school design nowadays, you're not thinking about spaces in isolation. You're thinking about how spaces work together as community spaces to provide various learning environments for teachers and students in a fluid environment. And thirdly, what's the sort of the equipment, FF&E, for equipment applications. So to kick that's our agenda. About 2 hours. It's going to be broken into 2 exercises. So I'm not going to speak for 2 hours. That's not going to accomplish anything. I'm going to set up some activities, two main exercises, and then we'll go through them. Each will be about 45 minutes in length. Each exercise, one for the communications piece, second for the design applications. Each of those deliverables will then be taken and work with the district and the communications team, and then with the facilities department, and starting to build the educational specifications. So this is just what has been done. Instead of over the 150-page report, in this one-page summary, we're going to take that and summarize it into some initiatives to enhance public understanding of district LCAP initiatives and to help drive activities around them, and then consider those facility implications. And I hit the wrong button. There we go. Oh. So to get started, what I did, I'm going to pass this around here. Actually, if you don't mind, just I'll take one and pass it. I'm sure you've all seen this. What I'm passing around is your LCAP summary, which I flanked on either side with some quick analysis of just looking at what you're doing to help define what are these themes that we're going to be able to communicate to the public about what you're doing for your LCAP. And so you notice the cells in pink and red there. Those are the additional work we've done. So let's start with the left flank here of the page. And you notice all the LCAP activities here, as you've coded them, are down the center. And off to the left, we just made some side notes about, generally speaking, what are you working on in this LCAP activity. And so the first one, you see implementation of ELA, ELD curriculum in all K-8 grades. Okay, so kind of what we're looking at is language acquisition, ELL. That's just my summary notes, and I'm going to ask you to look at these, and the exercise will be to edit these notes and to come up with ideas of your own that we can then use to create a summary statements. Professional development for teachers regarding the implementation of the ELD and ELA curriculum. Again, stemming around that English language learning. General education and special education coordinators provide instructional coaching to teachers. So we have special education focus there. And as you go down the list, we essentially just took shorthand notes of what we saw as key themes here. And generally speaking, as we read it, it looked like to us that some key focuses were expanding student support or closing opportunity gaps, expanding career and readiness opportunities, and expanding STEM opportunities. Seemed to be within those 3 buckets you could really account for, in my reading, these LCAP activities. So that would be a draft identification of themes from your LCAP. And the activity, since we're a smaller group, it'd probably be a little less than 60 minutes, probably like 45 or so, is to go down in small groups of about 4 or so people in a group. We just turn to your neighbor and go to town, and look at these themes, look at the general activities, and we identify the first one as ELL focus. Would you identify as some other kind of focus? And then, what do you agree more or less that we're focusing on closing achievement gaps, on STEM, expanding STEM, expanding career focus education, or are there other ways you would want to categorize this and develop talking points and plans around? So the way that I've slated to do this kind of exercise is that you would work in small groups to go through these, to take some notes. I have some snow cards if you want to use those, and to do a think, pair, share exercise. Are you familiar with how those? Have you done those? Okay, we're familiar with that. Consultants, think, pair, share. Okay, so 45 minutes or so. So we'll take each group would consolidate, get a master list of what you think your really 2 to 3 themes are that are emerging from this, and then consolidate with the group next to you. We'll come up with 2 master groups as a room, and then we'll work as a large group to take those two lists, merge them into one, and move on to the next exercise. Are we clear? We're good? Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Just turn to the 4 people nearest to you, I'd say. And here's the list. If you want index cards to take some notes on, go for it. And let's aim to do the first analysis and start doing your first pairing exercise in 20 minutes. So let's take about 20 minutes to try to get to the first group before coming to consensus, and then we'll move to the next group.
Okay, so we had one bucket close the opportunity gap, and in that bucket, we have coaching strategic support. So I don't know how much we want to explain. We numbered each of ours. Did anyone else number? So you're with me on the numbers. I'm going to go numbers. So we are going, they're about 5 minutes. Yeah, that was determined. I'm going first.
Avery, you can distract all you want. She's focused.
Okay, so number 3, we felt should be all ed instead of just sped, and it should be coaching, strategic, and support. Number 4, we changed to equitable access. 5, leading lagging indicators. 10, people and programs to support positive student outcomes. And 12, evaluate implemented alternative ed programs. Then our second bucket, what are we stopping to? Well, I'm sorry, were you writing what I was?
Tell me the buckets. I'm just going to write the buckets.
Gotcha, sorry. Close opportunity gap, instructional efficacy. And the last bucket is yearly educational opportunities and wins.
What's the acronym?
YOW.
Just the title, right? That's all we're doing?
And wins is in W-I-N-S?
Yes.
Or wins, depending on the springtime.
Nancy, you're
We just keep passing it.
So those are 3 buckets.
So you have 3 buckets. Okay. All right, so we said that we had 4 buckets, actually. And we have 1 being instructional and in curriculum. And that included quite a few different pieces. We had 1, we kept your STEM, which included science, next-gen standards, PLTW, one-to-one initiative. The other big bucket is strategic support, SPED, which included GATE, speech, DRA, all that good stuff. And then we also had professional development, which included Danielson and kind of had some overlap with strategic support and curriculum instruction.
We also had mega year-end opportunities and wins, so we had meow.
Is he missing a bucket? So STEM, instruction curriculum, SPED. You're missing PD. We called it PD, professional development. And that was Danielson and other pieces.
I didn't want this job, I was appointed the job. Okay? So, we kept it simple, 3 buckets. First one, college and career readiness, so we felt like all the instructional items could fall under college ready, and all of the STEM technology items could pair up well with career readiness. Our Second bucket is professional development as well. And third bucket is strategic support. So EL, alternative ed, SPED, all of those areas. And that's it.
All right. So try to loosely color code what was relating. So we could start some pairing here. Everybody see this? Read my chicken scratch. Okay. All right. So I see 3 greens about strategic support / SPED, and closing opportunity gaps. So we can save any, like the nuanced wordsmithing. One of the things that I know none of us like to do in exercise is to spend 30 minutes on, is it a so we're not going to go there. So what we will do, however, just generally speaking, what's a short action statement about what you're doing regarding this, and then be wordsmithed by people who do this wordsmithing for a living. Regarding strategic support, special education, closing the opportunity gaps. Let's start the negotiations. What statement do we want to encapsulate these things? So if we're going to take these 3, we're going to these need a verb of some kind. This has a verb statement. These would need some kind of verb statement, providing additional or enhancing, or what are we doing?
Or we just go with close opportunity gaps?
Well, strategic support is closing achievement gaps.
Yeah.
Literally, they're the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
Providing.
Should we go?
Well, what are we really doing with strategic support? We're systematizing strategic support.
Systematizing.
SSS.
It could be alliteration as well.
You would definitely need an additional word in there because strategic support is not really referring to a specific thing, like an opportunity or educational. It just predicts an open strategy, but for what? Education and opportunity. We would definitely need an additional word if you want to use that.
All right, so I'm obsessed with the word systems.
I like that.
I was just throwing that out there because Irene wanted to use the word close strategic support, so I didn't want, I thought that was kind of negative.
Cut them off.
So, because the way I look at it is district-wide, we're doing something together in 2 different places. And we have strategic support with the core, we have strategic support with special ed kids, we have strategic support we're building with GATE kids, but really at the end, we're doing it systematically.
Yes.
But that is Kirk's opinion, and you don't have to agree with that because there's probably a better word. Duran?
That's pretty good word.
I like systematic closure of opportunity gaps.
Systematic closure of opportunity gaps. Dora Harrison on the table.
Wow.
I like your systems word though. That's yeah.
So we have a proposal systematically. Yeah, we're not going to do it.
That doesn't work. It has to be systematic closure.
Systematic closure.
Systematic closure. Systematically, you have to make a closing. That sounds funny.
Closure of opportunity gaps.
Yeah.
Systematically close opportunity gaps. All right. Yeah, okay, I'm starting to do it myself. I'm going to stop. Okay. tweaking a word here or there later, we're more or less good with this?
Yes.
Awesome, okay. Check, check. One bucket down. Let's do the red bucket. Instructional efficacy. Instruction and curriculum, and then college and career readiness.
What is the word to the right of the second instructional?
My shorthand for curriculum, sorry. I ran out of space.
Oh, it's instruction and curriculum. Okay.
What about instructional and curriculum efficacy? Efficacious instruction and curriculum.
Resilient? Didn't tell us just, sorry. I'm sorry.
Instructional and curriculum efficacy.
I think the specific.
That's what I said. I said instruction,
I needed.
instructional and curriculum efficacy.
Should be instructional and curricular, right? Instructional and
And
curricular.
curricular
Yes.
Yeah, it should be
Yes.
instructional and curricular.
Yes.
efficacy.
There you go.
Does that come out to the eyes?
Yeah, cool. That's good. Oh, yes.
Tell me the college and career readiness. I'm lumping these together. Is it?
It's okay, yeah, that's fine.
Is it?
And do we agree that PD goes with that too? Or,
Yeah.
no, we get two different.
PD's a different color. PD's like purple, but it just looks.
It is, but that's me.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
me. And really, if you're you're doing this, you're doing it with professional development.
Yeah.
You can lump that.
Instructional efficacy.
Yes, yes.
So it's all
And then above one too.
Yeah.
Degrees too.
So that was the one. Yeah.
So are we have now done this red,
Yeah. Oh, STEM.
and we are lumping it all together?
Yes. I think STEM would also go into the instructional.
So the one thing that I would note is that this is a very broad statement, and you tend to drill down. In these LCAPs, you're talking very specific, next generation science standards a couple times. Like very specific about STEM, very specific about Project Lead the Way in middle school, and then career counseling in high school. So there does seem to be some. This is, everything. There's some specificity here.
So one of the things, just quick history for you, and most people in here, I think, sat through this, and this gentleman as well. I don't know your name, sir, so nice to meet you. We started off when we did the LCAP, we started with a 10,000 foot view, a 1,000 foot view, and a ground level view. That was kind of the metaphor we were using. And so those things would be the equivalent in my mind of the 10,000 foot view. And then the 1,000 foot view would be some of these other things. So just frame of reference for that part of what we were thinking. But it doesn't have to be that way. I'm just saying we have, at least it seems like we have a tendency to have a big title and then we put things underneath the title.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so this would be, in that metaphor, this would be the title, and then we're focusing on NDSS, we're focusing on college or readiness. Are we good with that?
Yes.
What about our yowls and yowls?
Probably need to get a more serious title.
Explain that to me. Yearly, yeah. Where did that one come from? In looking at this.
So in the yearly educational opportunities and wins, we had community education and outreach sustainability plan, the expanding technology tools, and college and career readiness. So, sorry, those were, for those of you who numbered also, 7, 8, 14, and 15.
Okay. So, to be honest with you, as a community member, I'm putting on my community hat. I'm going to have a hard time figuring out what's going to fall into that bucket. That I can wrap my head around after I Google efficacy. My mother was an English teacher, so I got that one. But, this, I get. Intuitive, that, I get. What would be something I could wrap my head around?
Something around community building, really. I mean, all those things are about, well, at least 3 of the 4 are taking where we're at and where we're going. That's kind of where the wins comes from, is college and career readiness, or having 21st century classrooms, outreach to parents, parent education nights, things like that. So if we've covered curriculum and instruction and targeting kids that aren't getting as much as other kids in our district, then it really comes down to community building. I mean, what do you think?
I think as a corporation are indicate, Lisa was saying the same thing, that we had our compare component, which for us is really important. That part was missing, so I think it's important to kind of call attention to that. And some of the ways that we do the parent outreach is, yes, through workshops, and parents are always welcome to all of our meetings and collaborations, but also the celebrations of students as well, which I think comes back to the wins and all of that, and all things together.
Building community capacity.
How about 21st century outcomes and communication? Because the communication piece is important for all facets of the educational community. And then the educational community wants 21st century outcomes for their kids. I mean, for sure, right?
Right. Say it again.
21st century outcomes and communication. Or we could say 21st century outcomes and stakeholder communication.
Not as catchy as in Yale, but I get it.
I don't like Yale.
I know. It was good. It was good while it lasted.
Ow. I know, that was.
So another thing, David, is our strategic plan, which is in its 5th year, its final year, had 5 goals based on who we were as a district 5 years ago. And some feedback we have received on our LCAP was to get it down 5 down to 3. So to have 3 buckets wouldn't be a bad place to start.
Yeah. Looks like you're there.
Here's our Danielson that is our 21st century communication.
It goes on instruction. It's all about instruction.
There we go.
Conversations about instruction.
There you go.
All right, we got some buckets. And right on time, look at that. All right, should we just move on? We can take a little break, or we just plow forward?
I think so now.
All right, plowing away. Okay, so the next activity is looking at everything to the right of, on that grid that you have there, everything to the right of your LCAP, where we look to attempt to quantify what we saw there, and I'll bring up a spreadsheet to kind of show you what we're thinking. Oh, it's up there, okay. In the background, so we took, looking at the different spaces that you take for example, implementation of ELA and ELD curriculum in all K grades. Number one, where does that take place? In a core classroom. Core classroom is just a standard classroom, right? So what are the adjacencies that you typically want to a core classroom for 21st century education? Well, you want sort of adjacent to other core academic classrooms, embedded with some special education opportunities, small group or huddle rooms, tutor rooms, extended learning areas, basically a diverse setting of sizes of classrooms and learning spaces adjacent to the classroom. So me as a teacher, I'm teaching my kids, I do my 10-minute introduction, I say go work, and some of the kids are going to work in small groups, some are going to work in larger groups, and they can span out in my classroom, outside my classroom, but I can have my eyes on them at the whole time. It's kind of like a Pollyanna situation, and new designs have that. What do you need as far as furniture, fixtures, equipment, and other considerations? According to this LCAP goal, well, you need some acoustical privacy. You need to be able to spread out work, but you have to have some acoustical privacy, sort of the opposite of the 1970s pod, which you are blessed not to have. So the second line, professional development for teachers regarding the implementation of ELD and ELF curriculum. What do you need? Professional development space. One of the things that we find, we program into buildings now are professional planning rooms for teachers that has dual purposes. One, you want teachers to collaborate, teachers want to collaborate, you want to foster innovation and cross-curricular learning opportunities and maybe develop new kinds of curriculum and so forth. And so you want teachers to have space to work together to do that, rather if they're just sequestered in their own rooms for planning periods, they're not going to be collaborating. Two, it improves the efficiency of your building. You can actually get more bang for your buck when teachers are going in a professional planning space in a planned sharing situation where, like 7 teachers share 5 classrooms and they have a common planning area and all that kind of stuff. And it's just a little marginal efficiency. You get some cross-curricular and professional development opportunities. Win-win. All right, so that's the spatial implication. What are the adjacencies? Some typical adjacencies you would want to that. And then what are some FF&E, furniture, fixtures, equipment? You need large tables, chairs, projection equipment, office space, basically, an office space for professional, for teachers. So that's what we did. We went through and looked at these different initiatives and then said, all right, well, let's see, what are the, what do we have here in terms of the kinds of spaces, and we coded those by the types of spaces that you would want, and then the most common thing that came up in terms of space types that you would need, professional development space, came up when we coded it most often. And then as far as what are the kind of equipment, number one, large tables and chairs, projection equipment. Which is not surprising when you do a lot, when we do a lot of work in this, the actual furniture becomes a huge topic of conversation. Now, you have a young building portfolio, which is amazing. And so you're not dealing with a lot of legacy issues that a lot of my clients do. So you don't have the World War II era desks that you hide under when the Russians try to bomb us. You don't have those things in your, but you have, it's stuff on wheels. And so what teachers want, they want boom, they want flex, they move, and adapt the classroom within the period between periods. And so you highlighted that as a need for students and adults, at least how we read it. So the exercise now is not so much to come, we're going to come up with A similar kind of exercise, not going to be as structured as this one was, but we want to just come up with what are some design considerations just based on your LCAP. Now this is a very beginning list. When you would do a full educational specifications, what you're going to look at are defining for elementary, middle, and high what ought to be for certain capacities, every type of learning space that you want to program, at what quantity, at what size, what are the purpose, users, and activities of all of those spaces, what are all the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, floor, ceiling, FF&E requirements of each of those spaces, and then actually bubble diagram those spaces out in space and time so that you can essentially have an architect go, all right, design this based upon purely how you want to teach, and then let the design professionals do their magic, because that's what they're awesome at, is making your dream in space. But we focus on the dream. We don't worry about the space yet. One thing I don't want to do here is just give me the school that I saw when I did that visit in Sacramento once. Like, no, that's not. It's what do you want to do curricularly? What do you want to do educationally? And then we'll worry about the design way down the road. So, for this very beginning, you know what? This does not work on an Excel sheet. PowerPoint back up there. There she is. All right. So there's just my little count of coding, the different spatial implications of what I read there. So here's the next exercise. Open up your spreadsheet, review, edit, note similar things about the possible implications of your LCAP initiatives on those different kinds of spaces that you need in your buildings, how those spaces should relate to each other. In other words, groups of spaces. Is it adjacency? Okay, yes, professional development space. I need a professional development space. Where should it be applied? That's the second bucket in adjacencies. And then what should it have in it to make it tick? That's the third. FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment. Desks, light, projection, all the stuff that plugs into or sits in the walls or sits on the floors or we work with. So we're going to do this in since we're a small group and we're just going to basically mimic it. Go through about 20-ish, 20 to 30 minutes in the small groups that you were in and go through it and look at the different kind of spaces that you might want, where those spaces should be, and what they should have in them, and then we will make similar lists up here on the board. Listing, as you discussed it, look through this list. What were the kind of learning spaces? What were the physical spaces that you saw needed based upon or implicated from your LCAP initiatives? I was just with this group, so you guys were talking.
We were just talking about professional development space that is actually usable to a purpose. So we think about and I think kind of it went on about how much the efficiency of the space gets lost, or what you're the work you're trying to do in that room if the space doesn't meet the need.
Oh, I'm a bad host. I keep forgetting to use the mic. I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead. Can you repeat that? I didn't ask you this last time, and I totally blew that part, so I'm going to ask you that for you.
So we were just talking about a PD space that meets the purpose and it's dedicated. It's not like repurposed as needs come up. That would be kind of like a non-negotiable that is always protected. And then making sure that we're able to efficiently use that space in a way because we know that we have enough room to do the various tasks that we might want to do within that space.
Yeah, dedicated professional development space designed for, it's a professional office space. Designed for teachers to plan, so you can plan on being there, if you know it's there, you have the tools, you have the space, other teachers are there. It's your office.
Right.
And it's a joint office.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Other, I don't want to, other conversations that you had about this?
Oh, one of, I don't know if it's my thing or maybe others share it, is like adult stuff in kids' space. So we were talking about, there's might be a kid space in, let's say, at Altamont, we have the resource rooms, which is a kid space, but then it has adult stuff in it, such as a copy machine. And so that kind of impacts the usefulness of that space because now you have potential distractions in there. So kind of being mindful about pulling some of those adult things and setting them outside of the kid space so that the kid space is a kid space and the adult space is the adult space.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's almost to the point where adult technology and needs for like the in and outs is a way in a closet, another smaller room perhaps, and so that is separate from the kid space when we're asking them to work or for us to deliver instruction. Someone else needs the microphone.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, so as a group, we didn't see anything real definitive that we felt like needed adjusting or edits, but there was one area here regarding gate testing, or just, it says gate. It says psychology, space psychology/testing office. So just to clarify, our psychologists do not play a role in gate education at all, and they don't take part in administering any kind of gate assessment. So the way that works is any students that we identify that we assess for gate, there's an assessment given to them online, something they can do right on their Chromebook, and we have currently support from our curriculum techs or teachers on special assignments who will facilitate those exams. So we don't need an actual office, and the psychology department is not involved. Okay, so I would just edit that completely. And that's about it.
Okay.
I think for me, what the biggest challenge that we've come across is ports that are accessible to connect the devices to. Seeing at the high school, they've got them connected against the wall to charge them, and now thinking about future spaces, trying to accommodate it like we've done here on the floors.
Tech and power ready.
Yeah. When do you ever think you'll need it?
Now, you remember, your buildings are so young, and your buildings are teenagers, so that maybe you didn't deal with this. But when we were assessing buildings in days of yore, we would look, do you have enough of the Cat5 cables plugged in for people to plug into the internet? Right? Well, then now it's wireless. Okay. So that was a bunch of wiring for naught. Something tells me that power is not too far off, because power gets portable too. And basically everything's going portable so that you can carry it with you. And so much like libraries used to be big places to store books, and now you just don't need racks and racks of book storage as much. You need some, but not as much. Probably the same is going to go for power. You probably need places to go plug in things that give you power that you can take around, rather than trying to design an entire building and furniture acquisition around having plugs everywhere. And 5 years from now, everybody's going to have, the Tesla battery that'll charge for a week, carrying around with them. Yeah.
So we talked about modularity, so furniture that can be easily adapted to other settings.
Don't mind me, keep going.
Okay. Really focusing on the blended instruction and learning and how that environment's going to change. So again, that tying in with the modularity. What? Okay, tell me this.
The amalgam of content.
The amalgam of content. Do a quick Google.
You are.
And
A little bit more. Sell those words.
I did with my eyes. Literacy through, got it, literacy through social studies, science electives. So really focusing on using the social studies and science to teach literacy instead of having a standalone literacy class. Is that what the?
Yeah, okay.
Understanding that that's way out in the future, but that's definitely a plan and how our space would change, because we might not necessarily have an ELA class, a science class, a social studies class, but they may combine together, and that goes back again to the modularity. We need to be able to be flexible with our learning spaces, and how the students will be instructed through science may be different through social studies. Okay. Reach beyond the four walls for learning, intensive high-tech, and collaborative learning spaces. So really giving students, again, it comes back to, you're going to have a different space when you're having instruction, and then after that instruction has been delivered, the kind of space students are going to need to be collaborative and working together. So two different spaces, and that space could have to change within a 30-minute period, and you can't do that with the design of a regular desk right now. It needs to be for instructional time, effective and efficient. So move the desks quickly.
Yeah, this blending of the, I didn't use the amalgamation of curricula, although I like that. That's good. Getting my vocab on tonight. But yeah, so blending the curriculum, we're doing a process outside Dallas for a junior high in an ed spec, and in the middle of through the process, the social studies teacher and the English teacher were talking, and then they went and talked to the chief academic officer and came back and said, tell you what, rather than you giving us each a 900 square foot room, give us one 1,200 square foot room, and we're going to teach humanities. So, those the whole building shaved a little bit of square feet because you needed one classroom instead of two. They got a course that they got to check off. You could check both boxes with it. Boom. And it was neat. So yeah, that can have real facility implications, because now you got some space. You start to do that with other curriculum, it can have a big impact. I think I missed something of what you said, so just go ahead.
The tech intensive part, and we talked about our students needing to make sure that they have enough technology in the classroom to go beyond the four walls of learning in the classroom.
Okay.
So in other words, you have a large monitor, you have the ability to go out on the web and collaborate with other schools, classrooms in the nation, across the world, or whatever.
Teleconference opportunities.
Yeah, or really just network.
Sure. I mean, like the neighboring school district where my school district I live in, two high school district where they want to teach advanced Mandarin, but they don't have, they have 3 high schools, right? They don't have enough kids at each high school to take it. So there's a 50 square foot booth in the tech center that the Mandarin teacher beams the class out to all 3 high schools in. And so that's like working that kind of networking within the district to provide something to scale that you couldn't do it the old-fashioned way. Okay, so what do we see from the space standpoint? Dedicated professional development space, separating that from staff, the student spaces to minimize disruption, tech and power ready spaces for telecommunications networking. Thinking ahead of time about blending the core curricula and what that impact would have on space. And the rapid adaptation of being able to rapidly adapt space throughout the day. When the blending the curriculum, insofar as you can, prior to your inspects, have those conversations about what might be a low-hanging fruit that we could start to do that with, that could help drive design. And then, of course, a solution for starting that is, making classrooms, two classrooms that with a wall between them that you can move, so they become one. That's great from the sense that it provides hey, now we have a large space. What it doesn't provide you is building efficiencies, because you're still using that same amount of space that you would in the traditional way. So that's where the thinking, as you think through the visioning of the inspect process, what might be some of those opportunities that you would want to start to gauge in about thinking differently about some of the curriculum. Okay. Let's get to the FF&E, the furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and then we'll talk about adjacencies last, because that is the most fuzzy of all of them. But what kind of learning tools did you talk about being needed? Classroom, professional development space, what came up? Or
when we talk, when we, hello? Is it on? Sorry. When we talked about modularity, we talked about the ability to shape the classroom for whatever the instruction may need as an outcome. So you have your direct instruction, and then you move into your student learning, and having the ability to change the desk, change the structure of how kids are grouped quickly and effectively will improve student outcomes.
That has, in my mind, there's two things. There's room design, and then there's the desk and the furniture.
Right. Right.
One of the room design that I just, as a general rule, kind of like the fat L concept, where you have presentational space, all your ducks in a row here, and you can line people up for presentation. This is your bleed out and spill out. But that's the spatial, and then, of course, the desks and so forth. Go ahead.
That's it. Modularity.
Got it.
We also talked about collaborative learning spaces. So the whole idea of modularity is that you can create learning spaces that are collaborative. So that was the kind of the catchword that we used.
Okay.
I think what's happening is we're 1-to-1, 3 through 12, and we've made that conversion with Doors is on.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Some of the other ones forget.
So we, in some ways, you're talking about the FFE, that's the stuff, right?
Right.
So we're already 1-to-1 grades 3 through 12. And we have the switches and the access points and all that. And then we're starting to transform into the projections, the projection 21st century classrooms work that we've done for the last 2 years. So I think, at least from my perspective, there's a bit of a struggle to come up with something possibly new or something, because we're been moving for a couple, 3 years now towards something progressive 21st century, and we have the schools that we have with the squares as they are, if that makes any sense. So the modularity and the furniture is one that we have not addressed, and I think that's kind of why you see the kind of the bouncing back to that on the FF&E part.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when your portfolio is 15 years old and you've got 1-to-1 for most of your grades, that's what's left.
Right.
You're not knocking down the walls. you're replacing what's in them, absolutely. So, thinking back to our buckets, our LCAP buckets here, anything specific to, let's just start with closing opportunity gaps. And for the populations that you're targeting, what might be some spaces or tools, learning tools, and learning tools doesn't necessarily have to be tech, that you would want to be able to help close some opportunity gaps.
Okay, I want to go back to the furniture gallery and try to move us on. I was thinking about it. And one of the things, here we go.
One of the things that's come up at Wickland is that we want to do these small strategic groups, and everybody wanted the kidney tables, which are great, and we're finding though that the chairs are so bulky that we kind of need smaller seating too. So their teachers are coming up with all kinds of things that they're finding, but they're using small stools, they're doing all kinds of things so that students can fit around the table in a circle and there's enough space.
So the issue, are you talking about like the big phone?
So you get like these big, you get their kid chairs over there and you can't really get very many kids around the table, but they actually fit more comfortably if you have a stools instead that take less space, and the kids then have room to sit and be close to the teacher and to each other as they're looking at the same literature together. But that's been an issue. And our district really supported us in getting the kidney tables and making that happen. And then the next piece was we realized, well, these kidney tables are awesome, but now I can only fit about 4 of these chairs around it, and I actually want it to be more like 6, so.
Yeah.
So we're finding all kinds of things, but that would be the next thing to kind of look at.
Can we call that, Nancy just talking to the mic, can we call that? Can
we call that?
Make sure you buy the tables and the chairs.
We need to buy the tables and the chairs.
We have to be better organized about when we buy kidney tables or whatever metaphor that is for, that all the other stuff comes with it.
Yes, we need the chairs that go with the kidney tables because the chairs we have didn't really fit. But we didn't necessarily know they wouldn't fit till we had the cool kidney tables.
Thor would call that accoutrement.
We need cool stacking chairs that don't take up so much space. I don't know about accoutrements. It wasn't on our list, but as I was thinking about it, there have been things that have come up that we keep trying to use. And we have gotten rid of like our computer labs. I know at least Wickland did, I think Altamont did too. Like, why do we have the space? We need the space.
It's going to be remade into what? Tell David what you think it should be remade into.
Well, currently it got remade into a OT room and speech therapist, but it could absolutely be a learning resource room for students, or it could have been a professional development room right next to our library. That would have worked really well, actually. Somebody take this for me.
Can we add PD to that? When you add modularity, PD would follow with that.
Oh, there you go.
I'd like to
The microphone is like a stick.
The modular,
Oh, just keep talking.
the modularity in the library. So the tables in the library, because when we have our PD with our staff, the tables are designed one way, they can't all hear you. But if you had the quick tables on wheels.
Tables on wheels, like a cruise
Yeah.
Like this, right?
Yeah, I want to have a quick library conversation in a second. Yes, library computer lab. So, others on the equipment, furniture.
A microphone that floats to the person who's speaking.
A drone.
That's true.
So actually, that same plan that I was talking about outside of Dallas, in their master plan, they put in the bond to mic every classroom. That's 66,000 students. Because when they did a pilot study for a year and they mic'd certain classrooms, they cut down on their sick days and they actually saved money. Because teachers didn't have to use their teacher voice all day. And so they got less sick. Next.
I would also add, like, functional but also comfortable. So if you're talking about different spaces for kids, even as adults in learning, when we go to different conferences, you get distracted by the fact of how much in pain you are by sitting in chair X, Y, or Z. So to take some of that away to where it's functional furniture, but also something that doesn't cause a distraction because it's so minimalistic that it doesn't support students throughout the day. And it looks different depending on the rooms.
Right. Okay. Did anybody have any thoughts about the whole adjacency conversation? Spaces that should fit together.
Irene was thinking that it was the library and the old computer lab space that could be a maker space, learning commons.
Let's go there. Let's just go right there. Library. And computer lab. Tell me about the current state of libraries and computer labs in your schools. How are they functioning?
Computer labs are going away.
They're going away.
Being reused.
Or
Repurposed. Not very functional.
computer lab is now Montessori classroom.
Okay.
Very outdated.
Yep. So these are being repurposed. How big are your computer labs? Are they a typical classroom or are they a typical science lab size?
Ours is,
Two of them are tiny.
ours is small.
They're smaller.
They
Okay.
think ours is small.
Okay. All right. So I just get in context and order of magnitude what the size is like. So they're smaller. Okay. Do you have any traditional computer labs left? Okay. Okay.
So then,
Okay. What about libraries? How much of your what are your libraries evolving? How are they evolving?
ours is really evolved. Ours is still. Yeah, creative. Our computer lab like links onto the library, so there's a lot of.
Our library is designed to have a lot of space in the center, so it could work really well for a PD or if there was additional space. But it's the tables, the way the tables are designed, you can't do that. But there's definitely the way the library set up, the books around it for the most part, the perimeter except for one area. So it really is the perfect space to be able to have dual functions.
But the libraries would need to be kitted out differently than they currently are to be truly a professional development resource. Because there's not a.
Well, we said there's a drop down.
You don't have all the, with a little bit of tech enhancements, I think it could be used that. But one of the other things was, because I was asking about that. And so the question,
So the question was, the libraries are currently being used by the students, like, so my wife being a librarian reads to the student, they have, each class comes in and she reads to them, so it's being used as a traditional library, but not necessarily all the time, right? So there are times when it could be repurposed into professional development if we had the right equipment in there, and the librarian can still do their work, at the desk and, filing or whatever. But it needs to be kitted out that way.
Yeah, so that the library conversion to professional development space, that's not an overnight thing. That takes a capital investment to actually, because what do you need? You need some acoustical privacy. You need walls so that teachers can work without, we talked about staff not interrupting students. You don't want the opposite here, otherwise it's not going to be used. It simply won't be used. And so it would need to, as you said, it would need kitted out. It would need some walls, and it would need the equipment in there to actually work. And so in that sense, anything else that's currently being done in that space would have to be done elsewhere. You'd have to find out a purpose for that. Which in libraries now, libraries are essentially, I see, they're disaggregating around the facility just like the computer labs. The computer labs went mobile and now now you have everybody's computer. The libraries essentially function as just getting the books out to different parts of the building. It doesn't necessarily have to be all in one spot. Operations can happen in the spot, but the physical things don't have to be. So these are currently being repurposed. But special note, these are small. So you're not going to be doing a major, major change here. It's just you have too many constraints. Potential PD. What about some other space, some other function there that you could put some kind of student focus activities in here, and then maybe you could repurpose a classroom for professional development. So what kind of student activities might you be able to have in a library setting that you don't currently have right now?
I mean, it's a blended space. So for our school, the library and computer lab are kind of like a blended lab that's all one.
Okay.
And so with that, there's opportunity to use robotics. There are still some traditional desktop computers because our Wi-Fi is not always reliable, so we do have some hardwired, a small bank of them. There's also the ability to kind of engineer using different materials.
So I would, I forgot what I was saying.
So basically taking the potential for, you didn't use the term makerspace, but kind of a
Right.
flex use.
Yes, yes. I mean, so sometimes it is, like all the furniture is modular, able to be moved, and so there is an opportunity to open up all the floor space to do like a robotics arena in there. And then, in a very few minutes, switch that over to using different materials like, we have little Ozobots, we have Makey kits, we're getting like the Rock and Blocks kits, like circuitry.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then also like non-conventional materials as well.
Charging stations
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, you can clear out the space, and it could be, you could do activities, build stuff.
Correct.
The project space.
Yes. And that's like the multimedia arts and things like that as well.
Okay, so how many schools do you have, is it a potential for recapturing some library space? Is that some libraries already made some transition and others haven't? Where are we?
Like capturing library space during this instructional day or after?
During.
I don't know. I would need to look more at that. That would be, there's a lot of
There's a lot of scheduling that you'd have to look at. So while there might be downtime in the library for 30 minutes, it's because we're dealing with other schedules. So 30 minutes could be downtime, but then we would have a class right back in there. So when I was speaking from the use of the library, it was really outside of the instructional day, not within it.
Got it. Okay. All right. Well, I mean, as far as sort of what our outcomes were for today, this came together pretty nicely here. Nice 3 clean buckets that can be utilized and maybe tweaked a little bit, but I think the bulk of it's right there. As far as the implications of your LCAP activities on space and time, big things that I'm picking up, as talked about because of your situation, is furniture, it's and professional development space. Yeah. Okay. All of us. All right. So to recap, we've got our 3 buckets to work with for our LCAP summary. As far as the spatial implications of the LCAP, the big ones were just being able to look at furniture acquisitions to be able to rapidly change over your classrooms, and to look at carving out some dedicated professional development space for your instructors. And those were the key takeaways that I got. Kurt, do you want to put a bow on it for us, or?
Yes. You loop it around, 2 rabbit ears, pull it through, double loop, pull it through again.
There you go.
No, but reality is that I think you guys did some really good thinking and kind of brought some things together. It's very complicated to predict what the world's going to be like right now. So with David and team's support, we'll be able to put a better modernized version of our 1998 plan that we're currently working off of. So if you get any other new ideas, feel free to email Thor and myself in terms of facilities and big ideas around this. But Measure L dollars still are around, and for the older sites and for the new sites, this will help us build them hopefully without having to make any significant changes, at least in the first decade in their existence. So other than that, are we done with this? Then thank you very much for your time, and this closes out our first installment of the District Advisory Committee. Thank you.